Okay, we are live.
Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to the Environment and Fish and Wildlife Committee. Chair Sheldon asked me to chair this morning. In her absence, she will take over when she returns. Today, we'll be taking testimony on first four bills off the wall in our committee. I will be asking the presenters to keep it short to 10 minutes, maybe a little less should there be questions. Representative Higley, see you're present. Representative Higley will be discussing Bill H7. Morning.
Morning, committee. Representative Mark Higley of the Orleans-Lamoille District. Just want to start out by saying that when this bill was presented on the floor, the 30 by 30 and 50 by 50 bill, Act 59 now, I had some real concerns about how we're going to achieve this, especially when so much of Vermont's land is privately owned. So in talking with Ledge Council, you'll see in the bill that they had asked me if it should be under a new category, including this current use. We chose at the time, and again, that would be a decision for you folks when taking it up, to include it under a natural resources management area. And again, it adds to that category or agricultural land or forest land that is enrolled in the use value appraisal program pursuant to 32 VSA Chapter 124. Just for information, there's over 16,000 rural Vermont forest landowners that are enrolled in the use value appraisal program. It's Vermont's most successful conservation program, and they were largely not heard from in the development of Act 59, and their lands were not counted in the inventory. Their goals for their land method, in which they've maintained it in an undeveloped state, the pressures they face and their conservation needs have not been equitably considered prior to phase 2 and the development of a conservation plan that will largely depend on them to be achievable. There is the report that came out from the Vermont inventory report from VHCB and the Nature for Justice report. It's a 50-some page report. I don't know if folks have looked at that, but it's pretty interesting. I have some real concerns with it's on page 32. Conservation expressed through public policy. And it talks about, in addition to a right conveyed on a specific property, conservation can be achieved through legislation and regulation rather than focusing on specific property. These conservation tools take a general approach to protecting conservation values. Legislation can be crafted to protect specific conservation interests, such as shorelands, wetlands, highest priority forest blocks, lands under public ownership, or, and this is the real concerning part for me, can regulate what can be done on private lands. Legislation is a powerful, sweeping, durable conservation mechanism. I did talk with Trey Martin from the Vermont Housing Conservation Board about my concern for this. Also about the concern for in phase 2, there's a phase 2 coming up. The committee hasn't been put together to consider proposals in phase 2. But my concern there is to make sure that there are private property owners, not necessarily environmentalists and other groups that are supportive of this sort of endeavor. And I was assured that there is time for that to happen. Maybe you are already aware of this, but there's about 5,899,041 acres of forest land, of land, 247,000 acres of water. But again, in the report, they've already talked about conserved land and ecological reserve areas is 236,000, so on. Conserved land and biodiversity conservation, 239,000. Conserved land and natural resources management area, 1.1 million. We're looking at already in these three categories that they had in the first report of 1.582757 acres, or 27% of the land area. Again, Looking at what's in the currently enrolled current use program, it's about 2.57 million acres. It's been a program that's been around since 1978. Again, concerned with some of the wording going forward. It talks about in one of the recommendations, conduct a spatial assessment of the conserved land inventory related to the priorities and highest priority elements identified in the Vermont conservation design. For the purpose of meeting the 30 and 50% goals of Act 59, this assessment could start identifying intermediate conservation steps such as how to address, expand, and further protect lands enrolled in Vermont's use value appraisal. So they're already considering looking at this. I worry a little bit about some of the wording when it talks about how to address, expand, and further protect lands. I think the current use program or the use value appraisal program does a super job of that already. Again, I think it bears consideration to let folks know. I have reached out in the rural caucus. It came up as the number 2 issue out of 10 to be addressed. I wrote a letter to the speaker with rural caucus members signing on, as well as the forest products industry, the Farm Bureau, the professional loggers group, asking that the speaker have this bill actually committed to ag and forestry, which is their jurisdiction is current use. Again, with it after their consideration coming back to this committee to look at where it fits in. So I think there's definitely enough groups and folks out there that are supportive. It looks like the study committee in phase 2 is going to be considering it as well. And I just think another thing in the report, maybe you've heard this already, but they certainly need more funds in the Agency of Natural Resources and in VHCB to continue this work. And so we don't necessarily need to spend that extra money, if you ask me, with meeting our goals through including current use land. Well, that's my spiel.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the committee members? Yes, Reba.
Yep. So, hi.
Hi.
Welcome.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that in current use, at any time, a landowner can say, I'm taking it out of current use, and and they have to, there's a penalty or something,
There is a penalty.
but that's my concern about, taking, counting current use land in this 30 by 30 and 55/50, because it's not, it could disappear, that land. So that is my concern.
Yeah, and I think that would be good for either this committee or ag in particular to talk about. I believe that there's probably more land being enrolled just because of the high property taxes than there is being taken out. As a lister, I'm certainly aware of land that is certainly taken out now and then, but it's in a small amount. And in my area, it's not that expensive to take it out. But I talked to a representative from Woodstock who talked about a 10-acre piece being taken out of a property in Woodstock. The sale value of that 10 acres was $400,000. The fair market value, that's what they addressed the penalty on, was $333,000. So the penalty was $33,000 for that 10-acre piece. So it's substantial. So people really have to think hard about when they take that acreage out as far as that penalty goes. So I think you'll find that there's a lot more land that's going to be enrolled in the current use program rather than being removed.
Thank you.
Representative North.
Yes, Representative Higley, if we were to include the remainder of or all of the current use land into the 30 by 30, 50, 50, how close would we be to meeting either the 30% or 50% goal?
Well, you'd be well over, because again, total acreage in the state of Vermont is, the 5 point something million acres. You've already got identified in the first report of 1.5 million acres, and there's 2.57 million acres currently enrolled in current use. So you're well.
Overlap. We were it was indicated to us by Gus Seelig a week or two ago that there's quite about 60% overlap.
I don't know that broken out separately as far as some of what was considered that was in current use, but Yeah, I'm sure it would meet your 50%.
Okay, so it gets us to 50%. Thanks.
Any further questions?
Right.
Ella, Representative Jacob.
Thanks. I guess I'd just love to understand. Okay, I very fully understand conservation work that's permanent easements.
Yeah.
And then fully understand the value of current use and what it does for our landscapes and our industries and our rural lives. But to me, there's such different programs. So I guess I'm just curious if your intention is to encourage folks in current use towards that permanent conservation.
I would
Because-
not.
Yeah, because so I'm worried that combining this, given the purpose of the bill is about, longevity and biodiversity and like centuries of protection. I'm worried that this would cause pressure on our current use program to put more pressure on our landowners. And that makes me really uncomfortable.
I don't believe it would. I think it would take the pressure off because again, if you don't include current use, how are you going to get private property owners? And that was my question on the floor. And I was told that, well, it's going to be voluntary. Well, there's more than one way to make things voluntary. And one is overtaxation, which is happening, and zoning regulations, which is happening. They're doing it to both. And my concern about, conservation is conservation. And my concern is this conservation efforts in perpetuity forever scares the heck out of me. And it already is, especially with, you may remember years back, the current or the director of Vermont Land Trust had some concerns about all this land protected in perpetuity forever, where let's say in Newport Center in particular, all the farmland around the village center was completely protected and they have nowhere to grow. And they were hoping to maybe, exclude some of that land, take some of that land out of that conserved in perpetuity forever so the town can grow, right? But because of that wording, it's a difficult issue to even do it. So this conservation efforts in perpetuity forever scares the heck out of me. And I think this is a way to not look at other private property lands for this total conservation of nothing happening on it anymore. I mean, again, you've got another bill that's being considered wild lands, In Act 250, you've got the Tier 3, which is looking ecologically diverse areas. I mean, there's so much out there that, if you ask me, is interlapping consideration and policies that I think we're going way overboard with what we're considering. And personal property rights is, in our Constitution. It's there and it's important. It's not, yeah. To include more and more public lands too as well is going to be a detriment to our towns when it goes off the tax rolls. These pilot payments in lieu of taxes aren't what make up the difference. So there's a concern there for me, but thank you for asking. Yeah.
Last question.
Yeah, just like in 50 years, what would your ideal be of conserved versus, not conserved land?
Well, even though I didn't like this proposal initially, if we were to include this current use land and we met our mark, we're good to go.
Yeah,
Uh,
okay, so we're not in.
I'm not in
I'm
the,
just saying in 50 years, what percent of land of Vermont would you think would be reasonable? If everybody in conserved use sold their land, took it out of conserved use, what would you, I'm just asking, because I know you're a hunter, I know you're a
Yeah.
woodman, so I'm trying to get a sense of for hunting and that lifestyle, how much land would you need?
well, again, I don't know as though you'd need that much in the sense of over the years, private property owners have certainly done and I'm one of them too.
Mhm.
I allowed 3/4 of a mile of the Catamount Trail to go across my property. I don't post my land. The snowmobile trail used to go to across my property until a neighbor cut it off. I let people hunt and fish. I mean, the list goes on. So, and I think a majority of Vermonters are that way. And I feel that I do the best I can to manage and conserve my land, but I'm not on any program currently. I'm not on current use.
Yeah.
I may have to be certainly, but so as far as the actual amount, I think with what they're even categorizing in the first part of the phase one is enough now.
Okay, thank you.
I know you said last
Representative
one.
Boswell.
Just a follow-up to that one, and if I can, Mr. Chair.
Representative Christie.
Thanks. Mark, Representative Austin was mentioning recreation. Part of the conserved land process is people still have access to it for hunting, and you mentioned trails, et cetera, and other access. What's your opinion on private lands, and should they be considered for public access or by permission, could be whatever, but how would you address that, or if you're going to conserve these lands?
Well, again, I think history over the years has told about private property owners allowing folks to do that. And I know it's becoming more and more of a burden for some to do that. Now, whether or not we should look at something outside of the current use plan, as I was just thinking about for consideration for people that do keep their land open. I mean, that would be one consideration. Again, you know, as you know, the state is short on money, so if another program was set up in that regard, where would the money come from?
We seem to have moved beyond presenting what's in the bill into debating the subject. Is that what we want to be doing here?
We've got to cut it off.
Okay, because that's what we're clearly doing is debating
Absolutely.
the merits.
Thank you.
So I guess the last word is just the request out there now through the speaker's office, and I haven't heard back directly from her, and it'll be a month of this Friday, is to have this committee commit the bill to Ag and Forestry for their consideration first, and then get it back here to you folks. All right, thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Representative Harrison. Welcome to the committee.
Good morning.
Morning.
For the record, Representative Jim Harrison, and I'm here to talk about H94, which is an act relating to events and accessory at on-farm businesses. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you. I know you have a number of bills, and I appreciate the fact that you're continuing to talk about some of the new ones that you haven't had a chance thus far. This issue was part of another bill last year that I believe was passed out of the House Agriculture Committee. But this section did not make it all the way, so it didn't get enacted. As I think we're all aware, many of our farms, vineyards, and other related businesses need to diversify to stay viable. It's a reality in Vermont. That coupled with, 2 years ago, we had two natural disasters, which included a spring hard freeze. Farms across Vermont lost crops, including apples, grapes, strawberries, vegetables, and feed crops. And that was followed up by flooding in July. According to the Vermont Agency of Agriculture, a total of 264 farms reported aggregate losses of 16 million. On average, those farms lost 28% of their annual income due to the severe weather and flooding. So they were hurt. And then last summer, we had more flooding in some areas that impacted some of the same people. So this bill, aims to, expand the definition of accessory on-farm businesses to include weddings and concerts as permissible events. It seeks to exempt these events from requiring Act 250 permit if the municipality has adopted performance standards in site plan review for such events. So understanding the Act 250 part is your purview. I don't sit here and pretend to know, be an expert and know all the nuances of what should or shouldn't. All I'm trying to do is help make some of these places viable. So, and give them some more options, just like, you know, maybe I live near a former dairy farm that now is big into the maple sugaring. And that's important. And we can all agree that that's continuation of farming. I live near another place that used to be a Christmas tree farm, and they had a family wedding there. They thought, they didn't do it, but they thought about actually making that because they had the fields and venue to do that. They didn't, but if it would have helped, I would have been supportive, even though I'm a neighbor, sort of. So all I'm asking for in this, that you consider it, and I know we're always sensitive when we talk about changes to our permitting, but we've got to change with the times. Vermont is very, very poor, especially on weddings, that we are a destination for many weddings. I happen to have a business in my town that was recently named #1 wedding resort in the world, according to one a network. I'm very proud of that. It's a beautiful facility. It's not a farm, but it's there's no reason why we can't look at that. So it's a short bill, easy. Probably wouldn't take much more than 15 minutes of get.
Be 16.
Given time, we'll entertain a question from Sarita.
Yeah. Just being on the Colchester Planning Commission, the farms are allowed to have activities, but it's the enforcement that is the problem, not the permit.
Sure.
So we have people calling about they're playing music past 11 o'clock, or there's more parking, or there's more traffic, and I'm very cognizant of the impact of the neighbors on non-enforcing, not having a really
It
good.
depends on the music too. I mean, I have a neighbor, and he hasn't done it in a long time, and I'm really disappointed. That played the bagpipes, and first move where we are, occasionally he would. I just love bagpipe music. I really do.
Yeah.
But I haven't heard it in a long time, so I'm disappointed.
Probably not at 3 a.m.
No, probably not.
So my
Probably,
question-
I know, I understand that. But that's where the local part comes in. Colchester, I'm guessing, has more of an ability to, and you have a police department,
Yeah.
Places like Chittenden, don't. And I'm sure the state police probably wouldn't appreciate being called out at 2 a.m. to enforce something. So
Represented by Bartholomew.
Did you say that this was in a bill last biennium?
So I want to, and I should have looked up the number. I wanted to say 116, but that's just sort.
So that was in weddings and concerts, was in that and removed
Yes.
by,
I don't think it was removed by ag, but I think as it went further on the process, there were other parts of the bill. Like, my understanding is that did get enacted, but that part. And I can only presuppose that, if you mention Act 250, it raises flags. What are we doing? So I'm just.
Thank you. Representative Logan.
Yeah, you'll note that I am a co-sponsor on this bill. We did, we frankly just ran out of time to discuss this issue last session. It was something that the Ag Committee was supportive of, and, requested that we include it in our work on Act 250. We did get as far as including accessory on-farm businesses and exemptions for Act 250, but could not get as far as including on-farm business event or on-farm events in our definition of on-farm, accessory on-farm businesses. So I don't know if we'll have the capacity to have this conversation together, because obviously that's a little bit more complicated than selling, you know, honey at your farm stand. But I would be open to having.
And I appreciate that. It's, sometimes change is not easy, but the reality is what helps a farm or vineyard remain viable, changes. And I'm just trying to be, I think we're just trying to be responsive to that change. And I totally understand. That's why there is a provision there about, you know, the Act 250 exemption, but only if your locality has regulations or guidelines on doing that, not so it wouldn't affect us in Chittenden. So because we don't have anything, we don't even have zoning. So so we're from the, you know, backcountry. And we have plenty of land conserved, by the way. I mean, 60% is national forest, so.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much for entertaining me. I didn't even talk about basketball. No.
Next on the agenda, we have Greg Bird. He's going to introduce H27.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Greg Burke, representative. Yeah, H217 is a bill that would prohibit the use of solar radiation modification, cloud seeding, geoengineering, and other polluting atmospheric experiments and interventions. That's the subject line of the bill. And it's really one of the things that this stems from is this document here put out by the Congress, US Congress, back in 2023. I think it's about 44 pages. Congressionally mandated research plan and an initial research governance framework related to solar radiation modification. So it basically lays out a whole plan for beginning to do research on how to do solar radiation modification, which is essentially either using ground generated systems to launch different aerosols into the atmosphere, usually the upper atmosphere when we're talking about solar radiation modification, with the basic idea of trying to radiate more heat back into space. And there are folks that are very interested in doing that right now, as a means of potentially cooling the planet. But in conversations at, what was it, 10-ish years ago, there was 10, 12 years ago at MIT, there was a large discussion on this topic. And there were concerns brought up by scientists about the potential implications of doing this on a wide scale, just not knowing the effects on the planet. But it's gaining traction. This document is certainly got the ball rolling. This last spring in April, there was a retired U.S. carrier ship off the bay of San Francisco that was set up, and it launched, I believe it was ionized salt particles from the ocean over San Francisco Bay, and to see if what they could do to brighten the clouds in the area. It was in major media, like the New York, I forget, Time Magazine, New York. I'd have to look back which one it was. So it's well documented that it was done last spring, and the health officials in San Francisco ended up shutting the program down because there was really no discussion with local authorities on doing the research over the area. So the program was put to a stop.
So there is a lot of activity happening around this. I had someone from, and I believe you were telling me that the same person reached out from Rainmaker. It's a business that does cloud seeding out west. They reached out to me a few weeks ago, they were also in favor of having, of actually banning geoengineering, and the bill that I put forth. They were hoping to maybe put an exemption for cloud seeding, because that's their business. And they work with Utah, Idaho, California on millions of dollar contracts where they fly up drones and disperse silver iodide into clouds. And it is effective, I guess, at increasing the amount of precipitation that falls out of the clouds when they do that. And that's why it's been successful, and those states contract them to do that. Now, those states are always hungry for water. Vermont typically is not. And so in this bill, I'm still in favor of not allowing cloud seeding here either. I'm also a farmer. I've seen all the different challenges that we've had on our farm with precipitation, with variations in temperature, with just the variability of every growing season. Even the sugaring season, it's a struggle we should be running right now, and we're not. It's frozen. So there's so much variability already to throw. It's like there's a pendulum going like this, and just take another variable that is extremely chaotic and hit that pendulum another time. It's not. I don't see it as potentially creating more predictability, but probably less in our climate. On top of that, it's using several different chemicals, including and chaff, which that's outlined in the bill, which contains PFAS, and nano chaff can last for years in the upper atmosphere and not necessarily fall down. But smaller or larger chaff particles do rain down within a smaller time frame. And that's obviously concerning with the PFAS challenges that we have. So this bill would ban any form of geoengineering or solar radiation modification or cloud seeding in Vermont. And the fact that it's, getting phone calls from representatives of Rainmaker, it is at our doorstep. It's not here. And I think it's something that, when something's already in place, it's much harder to put a stop to it if it is potentially harmful to our environment. And since it's not here, it's a convenient time to put in legislation that will help ensure that our state has clean air, clean water. So the bill, just walking through the bill a little bit more, it does also regulate cell phone towers, because I'm not an engineer in this realm, but so right now they can elevate the amount of radiation coming out of a cell tower to just to simply know how much precipitation is falling in that area. But it's also apparently, and I could be, don't take me, as a complete witness on this one. It'd be better to get somebody else on this, but that elevating radiation levels out of cell towers can also be used in couple with certain aerosols and ionized particles to alter the atmospheric activity in the area. So this bill would also limit the amount of radiation coming out of cell phone towers to minus 75 dBm, which it's fine. You can actually go on your phone and really easily monitor the amount of radiation you're receiving on your phone, like your cell phone signal. Yesterday, I checked it out in our committee room, and it was at minus 112, which is a safe level. So if you go up to -75, or if you go above that or below it, however you want to look at it, to -70, 60, that's a higher radiation level. So I was getting really good signal at -112 dBm. So -75 is a kind of a safe cap where we still get good cell phone coverage. It would put in penalties for exceeding that, and it does have language for having an engineer that would monitor those levels, which is, I think, is not only is it something that's preventative for geoengineering, but also is something, we want to be careful how much radiation our cell towers are emitting anyway, I think, in our state, and there really isn't a whole lot of oversight on that right now. So there's a lot in this bill that is, I think, is new to folks. But I think once you learn about it, it's not far-fetched. This bill would have the state police actually be the enforcing agents, because if you have, for instance, somebody who wants to cloud seed, it's a drone, right? And that could be launched up. And so you need someone who can come on site and have, I think it's logical to use state police for that. And for a couple of other reasons potentially, but yeah, that's most of the bill. Any questions? Yeah, I can do the best I can to answer them, but.
Representative Bartholomew.
Geoengineering isn't a term I'm particularly familiar with, but looking online, it looks like that would include any method of carbon dioxide removal and sequestration. So is it the intention of this to make that illegal as well?
No, I don't believe so. I can look up, let me just read the definition in this bill. It means, so geoengineering means the intentional large-scale alteration or manipulation of the environment involving the release of aerosols, chemicals, chemical compounds, electromagnetic radiation, or other physical agents that increase air pollution affect changes to the Earth's atmosphere or surface, inclusive of solar radiation modification, sunlight reflection methods, stratospheric aerosol injection, cirrus cloud thinning, marine cloud brightening, or cloud seeding. I think basically it's geoengineering is basically manipulating upper atmosphere activity. It really isn't related to carbon.
Well, I mean, look online, it looks like some definitions are. Okay, thank you for.
Not in
I
this
just
bill.
wanted to clarify your intent. Thank you.
Yep.
Any further questions? Representative Taglia.
Representative Byrd, is it possible you could send the link to that document that goes to the committee?
Yes, I actually, hopefully Anika got it. I just sent it this morning, actually, to her. Yeah.
You said you're a farmer. Have you noticed with any soil testing, any heavy metals or things that have lately have shown up in any of your soil tests, like all of a sudden seeing higher amounts of sulfur where we know it's been decreased because of the limitation of sulfur in diesel fuels and stuff like that since I think the early 80s, when we had to deal with only being able to have ultra low sulfur diesel fuel for vehicles and anything like aluminum. Are you noticing any of that, or have you yet?
No, I've had soil tests done. I think 2 years ago was the last time I had some soil tests done. I wasn't looking particular for those things, and it wasn't coming to my attention that there were high levels of those. I do foliar tests on my apple trees every year, and those have all been within the range of what we want for our fruit trees. So yeah, I haven't been on the lookout for that particularly, but yeah.
Any further questions? Representative Boston.
I want to thank you for bringing this, just because it's new technology. And I don't think we're going to address climate change by lowering fossil fuel use. I think I'm not hopeful that that's going to happen so that the temperature drops. So it's exciting to see new technology. It'd be helpful for me to have more data, more kind of conclusive data on the harmful effects. The PFAS is concerning to me, but again, more really substantiated, verifiable, replicated scientific data on actually what is the harm from this. Because it might be that they could do something to not be that harmful, but it could be possible technology or kind of a hybrid of this that could, perhaps, address climate change. So that would be helpful for
Yeah.
me, to be able to kind of want to pursue this further.
Sure, yeah, I could try to get any information I
Yeah.
can to you on what geoengineering has taken place, that's documented and has that data.
Or update it, just keep us updated.
Okay.
That would be
Yeah,
good.
the experiments that were done over San Francisco Bay last spring were the first documented that were tied to this mandate as far as I know. There could be others or and I don't know how much data was actually collected on that, but it's very much in terms of being done on a scale and through larger entities such as our federal government, or I've heard that Bill Gates is interested in also doing some that, I'm sure probably more data would become available if that research were done. Right now, it has to be done on a large scale in order to really gain, and that's where there's a lot of moral dilemma, so to speak, and that's in that referenced meeting I was telling about at MIT from a decade ago there was concern over even doing the research.
Interesting.
So that's why it has to happen at a large scale in order to be effective, in order to gain data, and there's a lot of concern about even doing that. That's why this bill would not allow it in the first place.
Mhm.
Thank you. Representative Bartholomew.
If Vermont did this, would it be in conflict with any federal laws or regulations? And I see one section here that says if the government or armed forces does this, the state police can tell them to cut it out. Doesn't
Right.
seem like that would be very helpful.
Yeah, I don't believe there's any legislation currently in the federal government. I could be wrong. I'd have to research that. I do know that in this mandate, there are a number of agencies that were brought in to the conversation, including the EPA and others. And that's so kind of similar to what happened over San Francisco Bay in the spring. The local officials put a stop to it. But the research itself was performed by, I don't remember the entity that actually performed the experiment, but it wasn't done in collaboration with local authorities, and that's why they put a stop to it. So yeah, so there's a little bit of a tightrope to walk there. I don't think it's necessarily to the degree of like Colorado legalizing marijuana in its state and going against federal regulation to do that. You know what I'm saying? Because there are no regulations in place. It's more of a Colorado deciding to legalize marijuana, and the US government is interested in whether or not that's a good idea. Because to my knowledge, no, there isn't any legislation in place.
Thank you.
Representative Chapin, this will be the last question.
Thanks for bringing this. I think it's just really important to question new technology, especially at this kind of scale. Frankly, it's a preventative approach, and I wish our society took more preventative approaches to all kinds of new technology. So I appreciate starting the conversation, and also I want to thank you for supplying my family with all of the apples we need every year to press all of our cider. And, it's nice to see you.
Glad to do it. Thank you for supporting our farm.
Since that's a non-question, right? Representative Pritchard,
No, I'm just,
you're good?
I'm good.
All right. Greg, are you ready to swing into three oh
Go
three?
to 303, yes. So H 303, it's another banning of an application. This bill would ban land application of septic, sludge, and biosolids. It would also prohibit the sale of compost or other agricultural products containing or produced from septic, sludge, or biosolids. The bill itself does not mention PFAS, because it's not the only concern that I and others who co-sponsored this had, with biosolids, and sludge. But PFAS is a major concern with these materials. But it's a pretty short bill. I can just read real quick the meat of it. It would strike out quite a bit of language in statute right now, that has to do with testing of these materials, because there would be no reason to test the materials anymore because they would not be allowed to be applied in the first place. It's notwithstanding any provision of law to the contrary, a person shall not apply or spread on any land in the state septic, sludge, or biosolids, compost material that includes in its production the use of septic, sludge, or biosolids. I need more coffee this morning. Or any other product or material that is intended for use as a fertilizer, soil amendment, topsoil replacement, or mulch for other similar agricultural purpose that is derived from or contains septic, sludge, or biosolids. And it also prohibits the sale or distribution within the state of those materials. I mean, again, I'm a farmer. I would not put these materials on my land, even if they were tested for PFAS specifically. I have a lot of concern about pharmaceuticals that are in our waste, heavy metals, things that even different forms of PFAS that we don't know exist or have the ability to test for, I believe, just because there's so many different forms. I reached out to Steve Collier from the Agency of Ag about the testing of other materials in farming, such as chemical fertilizers, and they don't even have a means to really be able to test those products right now. I don't believe we need to be careful with how many tools we take away from farmers. So that's not something I'm interested in looking into further right now. I just wanted to see what was already being done to test those products, and they really don't have the ability to, which makes me wonder how effective testing septic and sludge is, because if we don't have a means in place to test potash or urea or right now. So, but yeah, in an effort to have clean water and clean soil, I think this is another important bill to consider. I called the manager of South Burlington's wastewater treatment facility, Montpelier, Bennington, Brattleboro. I think that's all. Those are who I talked to so far about it to get their thoughts. And there isn't a lot being sludge and septage. There are not a lot of farms that have it land applied currently. Steve Collier is only aware of 5, he said, in the state right now. So it wouldn't have a big impact in that regard. On the biosolids end, that's a product that companies like Casella create and sell. And so I'm not sure how many farms are applying biosolids, which is basically a dried, and I don't know the whole process of creating high quality biosolids. I can't speak to that very well, but it's a dry product. It's It's not like taking straight from the tank at Montpelier and applying it to land. There's a process that happens in between. And I believe it is all, and I'm not certain on this. I'd have to fact check this one too, but it might be tested for PFAS currently. I'm not sure. But there are, for safe drinking water, what we have, how many parts per trillion are acceptable but with biosolids, they go to 20 parts per billion. So that's an acceptable threshold. So the threshold is potentially allowing more PFAS to be applied to land than we would allow for drinking water.
Representative Christie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Rep. Burt, I pretty much agree with this, and I thought we were actually had banned land application in the past because of an incident that happened in Maine. For spreading of sludge on a farmer's field caused him to go under. It was a chicken farm. Anyways, so I appreciate this, but my question is, the way it's written, I'm trying to understand this. Would this include animal waste as well?
No, it wouldn't. Definitely not.
So the definitions pertain to human waste,
Yes.
septic and sludge, biosolid.
Yeah. I mean, if they mixed it with cow manure, which would be like a potential, like a compost manure or any. So if it's a soil amendment, so like, and that's the reason why that's brought up is because Casella does that. They mix compost and septic and to come up with a product. That would not be allowed, but any, as long as it doesn't contain septic, sludge or biosolids, it would still be allowed to be spread.
And then the part two of that
Or any-
question is, what do you anticipate we do with it? But right now, it's all.
That's
to the landfill.
that's a conversation, bring in folks to, that's why I called, these folks up from the different wastewater treatment facilities to get an idea of what's currently happening. So I did the math a while back, but we basically generate, I think, about 8 tractor trailer loads a day of sludge as a state. So one option is that it goes to Coventry landfill, as a lot of it already does. The leachate from, I know it comes from Montpelier and goes up to the landfill in Coventry, and they have an agreement to take all the leachate that they gather out of the bottom of Coventry landfill and process it here in Montpelier through their system, and then the effluent water goes into the Winooski after going through a filtration process, obviously. So they have an agreement where they take I believe all of the sludge from this treatment facility. South Burlington, I do believe, does that as well. Bennington has a belt press that dries it, and they create a compost material, and they say they use it for all of their roadside projects. So it's applied along roadsides. Brattleboro sends theirs to RMI, which is a company that is like Casella, but it's in New Hampshire. And they must, I don't know, whether they probably create a biosolids product out of it, I'm guessing. So that's a big question. I actually talked to the wastewater treatment manager of Stowe about this in the cafeteria last week or the week before. And, he's very interested in regional incinerator. The thing is that an incinerator has to go to extremely high temperatures in order to break down PFAS. And otherwise you're just launching PFAS into the atmosphere.
You're spreading it on the fields anyway.
Right. So.
What happened in Bennington?
Yeah.
It wasn't the waste, but spread on the fields.
Yeah. And so and also just to highlight this, Massachusetts just passed legislation that banned application of this in the state of Massachusetts. There's is a longer bill, and it sets up a fund for farmers who have, if they come, if they're found to have high levels of PFAS in their soil, and it's because of application of sludge or septic over the years, then they can receive compensation for the loss of their really the use of the soil on their farm. In Maine, you mentioned Maine, I believe they have a similar bill in place. So I mean, for me, it's tough because anything that's organic, I would love to see it recycled into our soil. The problem is that our waste is really has a lot of toxic chemicals in it. And I think it's important to differentiate between the reason why I'm not interested in looking into other products that are manufactured for farms for soil amendments and fertilizers, because those are manufactured products. We know the ingredients going into those. They have an ingredients list. Whereas when you pull material from a wastewater treatment facility, you have no idea. You don't have an ingredients list. You have whatever came down the pipe. And I think there's an inherent difference between a manufactured product. So we want to be careful that we don't take tools like manufactured products away from farms, or else we're tying their hands even more. And as a farmer, I don't want to tie the hands of farmers anymore than they already are. So we need to be careful that we don't just take whatever we do to septage and sludge and slap it on every product that a farm has to think about utilizing for its soil amendments. I'd be very careful with that.
Thank you very much, Craig.
Thank you.
That will conclude this morning. Let's take a
Thank you so much.
5 minutes.
You're welcome.
And make it ready for Council O'Grady.
Good job. How long?
5 minutes. Thank you.